Folks, thank you very much, and I apologize for the delay, which I'll explain to you in a second. But first of all, welcome to the September 15th, 2015 meeting of the Milton Let's start over. Once again, welcome to the September 15th, 2015 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. The commission is appointed by the Board of Selectmen to implement the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act, which is a state act, and the Milton Town bylaw governing the wetlands as well. As a matter of formality, we always introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan.
Michael Blute.
Arthur Doyle.
Ingrid Beatty.
Kathy Bowen.
And we have a tape recorder running so that anyone that speaks, we'd ask that they introduce themselves so we can keep a proper record. Everybody has an agenda, but as a courtesy, I think, to some of the people that may be coming in, I'd like to go out of order and go directly to number 5, the notice of intent at 693 through 711 Randolph Avenue. The applicant is asking for a continuance on that case. I think it has some interest in the public, and some people may be here in anticipation of that. But I'd ask the commissioners as to whether or not we can agree to extend that. It's at the applicant's request. There is one proviso, Jim. Sure. I just don't want people, sitting waiting and then have it continued at the end. But the one proviso is I do have a proposal from Niche Engineering for a hydrological study, and I'd like to give a copy of that to you so you can take it back to the applicant. Sure. Because it's something that I'd like to address at our next meeting, which is October. Kathy, do you have a date on that?
I believe it's the 14th. The 13th.
The 13th of October. Okay. All right. Could you just pass that down? Kathy, could you give that to Jim so that you could take it back to the applicant? And for the benefit of the public, what I'm talking about is a proposal from Niche Engineering. It's a contract with the town, but Jim, the proposal is going to be that under Chapter 44, Section 53G, we would ask the applicant to pay for that. Yep. And I know they want an opportunity to respond, to look at the scope and the cost and what. Okay. All right? But just to get that process started. Having said that, is there any objection to continuing this at the request of the applicant?
No.
That's done. And Kathy, if you could keep an eye out, if you see people coming in anticipation of this, we should tell them that it has been continued. And the next one that is at least a portion of the next one, which is Order of Conditions Extension, Lot 1, Gun Hill Street. That's a continued hearing, and at least a portion of that is going to be continued as well. There are two parts to that application, and that is that I think that the applicant expected that they would be part of the automatic extension. The legislature passed, actually they passed it twice, in 2010 and then again in 2012, to extend the permits, which there's a permit already in existence for lot number 1, and it's good for 3 years, and that 3 years is going to be up in November. The automatic extension applies to all permits, I think, through August of 2012. And I think we issued this permit in October of 2012.
Right.
Or maybe November of 2012. So this particular permit does not fall within the automatic extension. But nevertheless, we now revert back to the traditional approach, which is to ask the Conservation Commission for an extension. We've all had we've been there several times, actually, in the last 4 or 5 months. And I see no reason not to extend this. Right. But having said that, there is going to be an application which we just received tonight. It's not on the agenda for a minor modification, or it's purportedly a minor modification. But actually it's to move the house further away from the wetlands rather than closer, which I think one of the other houses did the same thing. Yeah. That we cannot address because it's not on the agenda. So that part would be continued until the next meeting.
There's an ongoing discussion about the invasive growth due to the removal of the trees and the watering of the lawn.
Correct.
And that is an issue that came up on lot number 3 that may carry over into the ability
number 1.
to extend lot number 1.
That's correct. And that discussion, actually Judith, I think, was probably the foremost proponent of addressing that issue.
Right.
And that can be part of the request for a change in the order of conditions.
Okay.
If it's a minor modification, then we can simply make it a minor modification and change the order of conditions, and that will be an issue to be addressed at the meeting. At the same time they're moving the house, we can address the issue of the invasives.
So do you want to table the whole discussion about continued hearing until that time?
Well, there are two separate issues. It actually doesn't matter to me,
Okay.
but I don't think the extension is particularly controversial. I think the invasives maybe. So we want to make sure we retain jurisdiction over the invasive aspect. If you'd like to put them together. doesn't matter
I
to me.
propose that we keep them together,
Okay,
because,
Okay.
yeah.
Arthur?
You can go either way. Michael, what's the advantage of doing that?
Well, the point that Judith brought up was that
I remember that, but what's the advantage of combining them?
the wrong word, the leverage that we have relative to the invasives pertains directly to the extension of the permit. If we agreed to extend the permit, then the discussion of the invasives could be withdrawn. So why don't we just keep them together and we can have it all, we can do it all in a shot. And we'll just do it when Judith's here, hopefully that'll be next month.
That, I would agree with you, but for the fact that they're asking for a change in
Right.
the order of conditions anyway. Because they want to move the house, and they're actually reducing the amount of space that's jurisdictional.
Okay.
So to the extent that they're, I know you're talking about leverage, no, you're being very,
I'm being
candid.
blunt, yeah.
Right, right.
Right,
I
and
agree.
that's purely the only reason, the only thing I see.
Okay. Ingrid?
So if they change the area of land that's affected, it will affect what the deal is with the invasives.
Well, we don't have a deal with the invasives. That's the point that Judith brought up was that on lot number 3, the invasives with the removal of the trees and the watering of the lawns,
Got more
gave-
light. they
got
took
more
off,
light,
They took off.
they took off.
Yeah.
So let's, two things. One is let's make sure that we try to solve that problem on lot number 1.
Mhm.
And because it's up in front of us for an extension on the permit, that's an opportunity to have that discussion. We don't know where the discussion is going. And my feeling was, well, if we agree to the extension, then you've basically lost your leverage, barring attaching it to the change to the order of conditions.
Right, that's what I had envisioned, but I suppose you're right, they could always withdraw their
Right.
proposal to change the position of the house.
Right.
That's certainly possible. Jim, do you want to weigh in on this? 'Cause
One thing.
Jim, could you identify yourself for the record, please? And you'll have to use the mic while you're there.
Jim Burke, Sell Burke and Associates here representing Tom Cochran for Lot 1 Gun Hill. My only thought on this is that you have basically a lot that's cleared to limited work, and that the extension of the order conditions will allow us to continue to actually work the lot and proceed towards a single-family house being built on it. Whether or not the invasives are discussed or,
Resolved, or
resolved,
approached, yeah.
exactly. So I'm thinking, let's get the order of conditions straightened out, and then we can come in with the amended order of conditions next time and then we can talk about the invasives attached to that.
If you're comfortable with that, yeah, sure.
Yeah, my only concern is that, as you said, that we maintain jurisdiction.
Oh,
That's
the
the only
jurisdictions,
Yeah.
yeah, you have that.
Right, we don't lose that.
Then I have no preference.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, sorry, I was
Like
just
Arthur,
bringing
I
up-
could go either way.
Okay.
It doesn't matter to me, but to the extent that they're separate issues, as long as we are able to address the
The invasives.
invasives.
Right.
And I
That's
think,
purely
and
the
Jim, you
point.
understand
I
that.
understand. I don't think here I am, albeit I am reducing the footprint and pulling it back away from the wetlands, it's still a change. And that kind of opens up the option of discussing the invasives that were identified the last site walk.
So you're not going to withdraw the request to change the footprint? are
That
you?
would be dirty pool, wouldn't it?
Well, some
No, I
Mike would think so.
No, I have to show my face up here about once a month, so, no, we're not,
No.
that's not what I'm, no Machiavellian thing going on there.
Well, upon the goodwill that we have with you, then
Sure.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah,
I am.
I'm just,
All right.
It's fine.
I agree.
So, is there a motion to extend the permit for 1 year?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Any members of the public, abutters, want to make a comment? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, so you've got a 1-year extension on that, and we'll see you next meeting on the proposed
October
modification.
13th.
13th, yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, and folks, I did that, I took 2 out of order because not only will it benefit the public, but it'll benefit Jim Burke, so he doesn't have to wait around. So now we go back to number 1, and that's abbreviated notice of intent at 0 Central Avenue. That's the town of Milton, and they have asked in writing for a continuance of that. That's the Hendry's plant, and that's that portion that Milton is interested in is the demolition. We have already issued the demolition permit to the developer, and that was done last April. So they've asked for continuance. That also will be heard on October 13th. Number 2 on the agenda is request for certificate of compliance, Truman Parkway.
Ron, before we go on,
Yes.
this is what number
continuous.
continuance? We've lost count,
For
right?
0.
There's been so many.
On the town?
Yeah.
I don't know, a lot. I think they've
Right.
been continuing it since November.
So to what extent do we want to say this goes on ad infinitum? I think we as a commission might consider saying, you know, you've got this window, and if it's not resolved within that window, more continuances. It's not in the
But-
interest
but-
of the town for this to go on forever.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly with that.
And how
I
do
think
we
the
help?
town is looking for a global resolution, and
Agreed.
the applicant already has the permit. We all believe that it's a public safety hazard, and the building should come down.
Agreed.
I think we've made that pretty
Yep.
plain since
We're all
last,
together on
a
that.
year ago.
Yeah, but since the applicant, the developer has the approval to proceed, I don't understand why the town can't pull the trigger.
I think the problem is that if you take part of the building down, then the other part's going to fall down.
That
Because
we-
they have a
right.
wall there that's a weight-bearing wall between the two.
Yeah.
Actually, there are 3 parcels.
But we're
that
not
town
letting, the
controls
town's
too.
not letting the contractor or the
Proceed.
owner tear down.
No, the contractor can tear it down. The problem for the town is, they need to go in through the same direction. They had to come in from the west.
But there's it said there's a quote agreement.
Yeah, there
For
was an
safety
agreement.
purposes that they'd come down together.
Yes, that's
Right.
correct.
So,
It makes both public safety sense and it
Right.
makes financial
so
sense.
what specifically is the holdup on the town side at the present time, do you know?
Do I know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you share it?
Well, I think the interest in having a global settlement is what's driving this. And there are 2 things going on at once. One is the demolition part
Right.
that we have done our best to resolve. The other one is the development component.
Right.
And a portion of the development component has been appealed to DEP because of our denial of,
So we're waiting.
one plan.
Town wants to wait for the DEP results?
I don't know that they can wait that long because the DEP
Right.
goes
Could
at
take
its
a long
own
time.
pace.
Right.
I believe that there is joint pressure to request that the DEP expedite that process. But what that translates into in terms of time delay, I don't know. And DEP won't delay, but then again, they've got
A ton of work,
a ton of
limited
work.
staff.
Right, they do.
And that's under the belief that the developer is gonna come to, that's under the belief that the developer is gonna cover the cost of the demolition of the town's portion.
There was a proposal under which that was part of the
The agreement,
consideration,
yeah.
but there is consideration going both ways.
I'll vote for this continuation without any, I mean, you don't have to vote on that in favor, but I don't know about how much further, as one member.
No, and I think that's a reasonable position, and I think you articulated it before. I think the whole town is concerned that this
It is.
process
There are a
move
lot of
along.
people, good citizens out there that
Right.
are very concerned.
So is the town able to fund the portion of the demolition, and then at that point it becomes a numbers game in terms of whether or not the developer reimburses the town? Because then the building's down. Our goal is to get the building down. and we gave the permission for the developer to take it down, and the town is dragging their feet, so can the town?
Well, I'm not sure the
pull
town's dragging their feet, because the town has been very aggressive in trying to get a global resolution. And the global resolution that I'm referring to is both the demolition and the construction of,
Right.
an appropriate project.
Right,
And they've been kind of teetering close. And the reason I'm being, if you think I'm being coy, it's
No.
because under the public meeting law, a lot of the discussions having to do with real estate conveyances
yeah,
is for executive session. And it is confidential. And the negotiations have remained confidential. And that's really a matter that's being driven by the selectmen.
yeah, but if the town decides, if the town recognizes or agrees that the building should come down, funds the building coming down, lets the demolition go ahead, and that just moves the cost of that work to the discussion rather than stalling the demolition.
That's exactly what's happened. That the cost of the demolition is being, it's like a ping pong ball going back and forth between the town and the applicant as to who's going to pick it up. But there are other aspects of the consideration.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And that's what's,
Right.
you know, within the discretion of the selectmen as to what's being given in return for the applicant picking up the cost of the demolition.
I just want them to take the building down.
Saying,
Right, so do we. So do I.
and we have agreed in previous meetings to a two-step process.
Correct. And the applicant did as well.
Right.
And the town did.
So, as far as I'm concerned, that's it. And anybody who's not letting us get that done is now in the way.
That's a fair statement. I think that's right.
Okay.
I think that's right. And you're right, Arthur, because I think some of the townspeople don't understand what the holdup is. They see the
Sure.
building there, and they say, why isn't it down? And we look at the building and say, why isn't it down?
Right.
Because we're ready, willing, and able to issue the permit to the town to demolish it.
Yep.
Right, and we've issued the permission to the developer to do it, and the town hasn't come forward to request, to finalize their application.
Well, we have their application. We have the town's application, correct?
We do.
So,
Well, one of the problems, though, is that the way the demolition contract was bid for a particular price, the contractor had to come in from a particular direction. And the particular direction is under the
Right.
discretion and control of the applicant. So if the town and the applicant can come to an agreement, and I don't see why they can't, because the whole building should be taken down at the same time. There are two ways to do that. One way was to come in over what I call the open area where the tree used to be.
Right.
The problem with coming in with heavy equipment there, the cranes, there are tanks underneath there, and the weight of the cranes could crush the tanks, depending what's in there. And then there's going to be litigation over who caused the tanks to collapse. The other way is to come in from the west, and that is to just take the whole demolition heading towards Central Avenue.
Right.
That's the best plan.
Yes.
But to do that, there has to be an agreement from the applicant to let the town, demolish the building, and the issue is who's going to pay for it.
Okay, but the applicant, the developer, agreed that was as far as they're concerned, that was a viable strategy. They were
Oh,
going to allow the
absolutely.
town. They're not restricting the town in terms of getting that access. So the developer isn't stalling, it doesn't appear to be stalling the project.
I'd like to clear this off our agenda. I think the debate that's going on is a debate that's beyond the Conservation Commission. And after this continuance, I would recommend that we issue our approval for the town and let them work out all the details thereafter and not have it on our backs.
Yeah, but we can't approve it until they've resolved it, they've presented a plan.
We can do an order of condition. We can state it's approved with these conditions.
Okay,
This
so
is-
we
this
end
is
up
how you
writing
do
the
it.
plan for them.
If they're not doing it,
We end up writing their
Yeah.
plan for,
yeah.
and actually on that note, we could, okay,
Mhm.
yeah. So we end up writing the plan for them and saying, go, this is what you're gonna do. You got approval.
Well, there may be other ways to do it as well. It could be an enforcement order, because if it appears to be not from the public if it is a public safety hazard, then the town should do something anyway.
Right.
But if it would be an environmental risk, that if the building collapsed and, you know, if there are any deleterious contents of the building and they ended up in the air, you know, into the
Or the
river,
river,
close to
right.
the river, then that might be grounds to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just trying to be creative, but I think there's a lot of people talking in different directions.
Yeah.
I think there's some good faith there. I think there is a resolution. So I agree with everybody that we should encourage the parties to get together and get the building down.
Can we convey that message to them?
Yes.
That our fuse is very short?
We'll do that.
Thank you, John.
Is there a calendar timeline by which, in this calendar year, it needs to be done? I mean, does weather affect this?
I don't think so. I think the MBTA is getting frustrated too, because they don't know when the shutdown is coming. And they need to know, and as I understand the construction.
It stands to reason before winter, I mean, they've got to do it before, say, like December or something, right?
Not necessarily.
No?
I mean, they want to use water to reduce the dust.
Dust.
Right,
So you don't want to be,
freeze
you don't
it.
want to be spraying water in the freezing weather.
Right.
But other than that, I don't believe that there's any
It
restrictions.
doesn't matter if it's,
No.
Well, there's
There-
always the unexpected, and if there's something that interrupts the passage of the trolley, people have to get off. That's not fun in February.
True.
Right, and there is a cost factor in that too, because there has to be a diversionary
that's right,
mechanism to get
Right.
people from, I guess, Milton,
They've got to bus
the
them to
Milton
someplace
station to
else.
Mattapan.
right.
Yep.
right.
And that's a fairly pricey issue, but I think that's probably on the table as well. But you're right, I mean, the public should know that we're not part and parcel of the negotiating going on.
Correct.
We have a role in it, certainly. But we will do our best to encourage all the parties to get together and get this done.
Thanks. That'd be great.
Anything else? Well, with that, we can agree upon the continuance for the town, at the request of the town.
Yes.
Yes.
And next on the agenda is number 2, request for certificate of compliance, Truman Parkway, Neponset River Esplanade. Anybody from DCR? Somebody was coming, right?
They gave us me the package. I assume they would be here.
Well, you know, while it's on the agenda, why don't we talk about whether or not this requires a site plan? Because one of the issues that came up, they had some minor adjustments of the trail, and it impacted on the trees as to which
Couple
trees were
trees.
taken.
There weren't a lot that I could see in the plan that were impacted upon.
Anybody think there's a sidewalk is appropriate?
I'm actually of the opinion that we should do a sidewalk, but given the length of it, I actually think that we should do it separately and discuss it either at the next meeting or at another sidewalk.
We could do a bicycle walk.
Yeah, we could, I think the scope of the thing is too big to realistically cover it. And it may be independent, everyone doing an independent review and then bringing it up at the next meeting or at the next sidewalk, or whatever. Unless there's, as you say, there's one specific location that you have in mind.
No, I don't, and that's what I thought we could narrow down tonight if DCR were here. So Kathy, you're surprised that they're not here, correct?
I am surprised.
Because they're usually pretty good. I know
They are.
Kathy Garnett was originally a driving force, and she's retired now, I think.
Correct.
But
But I
can you
thought
give,
Dana, I can call them tomorrow. I hate to pull the sidewalk and then they can't make it.
correct. So why don't we put
Well,
it
that's what
on
I'm saying,
for
let's do
October
it.
13th, and then make sure they're here, and then we can plan a site walk after that.
Can we agree to do independent sidewalks on our own? Because that way,
Sure, yeah.
okay. Because that way we can go to the meeting with an idea of what we want to, if there are any things that we want to look at. Because there's no way to, it's a long, it looks fantastic though. Yeah, it's very
Good.
nice.
And I think, at least on one of the maps that I read, 50% of the trees are on the city of Boston side,
Yep.
not on our side, so it doesn't make that a major, major issue.
Okay.
You know, we do have some portion of $15,000 from the MBTA that they owe us in trees and labor. And it actually was a result of the tree cutting along the right-of-way.
Yep.
If we could ever convince the MBTA to honor their consent agreement and pay us that money, or whatever portion, we have to share some of it with the city of Boston. But the bulk of it is in Milton. If we did see some areas that needed trees, the MBTA would be a good source for funding, and actually providing man-hours to plant the trees. That may be wishful thinking.
Yeah, what's the likelihood of that?
Well, in the next deficiency budget.
Maybe we could speak to Walter and Brian and to other people as well.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, but are we in agreement that we'll, Kathy, you'll call DCR tomorrow, we'll put it on for the 13th. In the meantime, we'll do our own individual inspection, and then make a decision at that time as to whether or not a full site walk public meeting is appropriate.
Yeah, we might be able to resolve it verbally just then, right?
Absolutely. Okay. So we'll continue that until 10:13. Next on the agenda is notice of intent, 600 Canton Avenue. That's Winter Valley. Yep, good evening. Welcome.
Together sometime other than Saturday or Sunday, I'd be happy to team up with you.
Yeah,
This
Yeah.
evening.
we grab 2
Morning,
bites and go. Yeah.
I think you do, actually. You're a rock star again with the mic.
I know, I feel like a celebrity. Good evening, my name is Matt Weber. I'm an engineer with Beals Associates. We're working with Winter Valley Residences on their facility here in Milton. Basically, just to recap, they're planning a repaving project across the site. It's going to be a phased project. It's looking like this year we'll probably get 2 of the 5 phases done, hopefully. And then a small portion of that work will be within the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland. So, if you can all see, this is the area in question here, sort of on the left as you come up the driveway. I'll flip through to the detailed plans.
Can I interrupt you and ask you a question?
Sure.
Did anybody reset those boundaries? Because we were not convinced that they were accurate.
Yep, so we rewalked the wetland line. I think one of your issues was correct, was that the plan didn't quite accurately show the flags that were in the field. So this plan has been updated to show the flags that are out there accurately. If you guys have a difference of opinion on the wetland flags.
We did.
Right, so we'd certainly be open to another site walk. I think either way, if the wetland line was moved, or I know either way, we still wouldn't be within the 25-foot buffer. And we've also shown the DEP wetland line on there. And even using that more restrictive line than what we had showed, we're still, well outside that 25-foot.
Right,
So-
and that's an issue. I think the consensus was, for those that were in attendance at the site walk, was that the flags were, A, not accurately represented on the plan, and B, weren't accurately placed for the wetlands. I mean, there was some very significant plant life that was, it seemed to be on an upland, that, wetland plants, and they were on the upland side of the line. So I would not want to approve the wetland line. But I agree with you, though, that I think we may be quibbling over, 15 feet here or there, but it's not going to affect the non-disturbance zone. I don't think we're within 25 feet.
Right.
And that is, if you go back to your plunge pool area, which I think is a good idea, by the way, but if you could point that out.
That's right here. So the wetland line is down here, and then you've got the 100-foot buffer, and then here's the plunge pool.
What's the distance as it's depicted there? If you've got a scale, you can just ballpark it if it's not marked. But are you within 50 feet or 75 feet or 26 feet?
This is probably approximately 75 feet
Away from?
away from the wetland line.
Okay. Okay.
I
mean,
can say for a fact that everything is beyond the 50-foot buffer.
Okay. That was my impression. And I don't know if, because I did not like
I didn't like the.
either
line.
the depiction on the plan or the line itself.
Well, in reading this September 2 document, on July 28, 2015, a representative from our office performed a wetland delineation of the property. Upon determining that the field delineation was very similar to the Mass DEP delineation, DEP, the Mass DEP delineation was held as the primary boundary.
Oh, that's a flyover. We don't accept the
Exactly.
DEP
Exactly.
lines, ever.
Right.
I don't think we ever have.
No.
That's
So
a
that- so that
ballpark,
was-
that's one of those aerial photographic flights, and they just kind of ballpark where they think the wetlands are.
Yep, and so that was more restrictive than the line that we found. So we're taking the
Right,
line.
but we didn't like your line.
And, you know, we can go out and discuss it, that's fine. It's just,
But I thought,
I didn't-
at the last minute, we came to an agreement that there would be a reflagging of that area.
we walked the line again and agreed on our original line.
So that's
You
where
agreed
we
with yourself,
disagree.
okay.
So you
I guess-
remapped it on the drawing, but didn't make any changes in the field.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. So
That's what I thought I read.
Right.
it's just hard for us to, based on knowledge that you guys disagree with the line, to just go and change it based on that opinion. We have to go on what we're seeing, I guess, which is soils, hydrology, and plants. So,
Well, when you have skunk cabbage plants outside your flags, the line's wrong. That needs to be corrected. And
It was pretty clear to us. I mean, we don't pretend to be botanists or wetland scientists, but we've been doing it for a few decades.
yeah.
And that one was off, we thought. And the way to do it is to have a site walk at the same time. But I was hoping we could see if we could get by this. We'll never approve the line as it's shown. At least I won't, because I thought it was just flat out wrong. But I don't know that we need to do it, because if we don't certify the line, I don't think we should certify that line because of what I consider to be an error. But nevertheless, it's far enough away from what looks like a good plan, and that is to put in that plunge pool and to correct the hill there and prevent some of the erosion that's taking place there. And I think by fixing it, that is fixing the parking area, you could probably retain some of the petroleum products that come out of the cars.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it as a good plan.
So you're saying don't worry about the line because we're not close enough to be an issue?
It's something that we ought to put on the table and think about.
Okay.
Is it a cost issue? Or is it a construction schedule issue?
For what particular?
Well, typically what we do is when we do a site visit, and we had a site visit here, there's a wetland scientist there that we can say, give me a soil sample here or give me one there. What do you think about this vegetation? What do you think about that vegetation? Is that upland? Is it fact wet? Is it fact up? So we have an open discussion with the wetland scientist.
Yeah,
We're not trying to drive your cost up, but that's our standard practice. So we usually move lines at the site walk.
sure.
And we have a discussion, and the wetland scientist will say, no, it should be here, and we say it should be at the other end of the rise or the change in elevation.
I think, John, if I remember correctly, at least from my perspective, we may have a middle ground, because most of the lines that I found at fault were on the extremes. They weren't toward the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
They were to the right and to the left. And that's outside
The project.
the right. So if that's the case,
So you're essentially agreeing with my, at least it's a
Yes.
thought, I'm not taking a hard position on it,
I'm
but
supporting it.
I think we could not approve the line and still be confident that they're not within 25 feet.
That's what I'm saying.
And because it's a good project, even if it enters into our jurisdictional area,
Right.
there is a net benefit. Although you really do have to clean it up. That's the dirtiest wetland site I've ever
Well,
seen.
that was another point I wanted to bring up. They've gone out and cleaned trash from the wetland and cleaned the brush out, so that's been done.
Good, that's good. That's good news. I don't know, Mike, what do you think
No,
about that approach?
I think it's exactly right. We can proceed without approving the wetland line, we're saying we're beyond, significantly beyond the 25-foot. I don't see a reason.
Okay.
And then we can just talk about the details of what's being proposed.
Okay. Ingrid, what do you think about it?
Sounds to me.
Okay. Are there other, give us some other things, because I remember
The pipe.
one of the problems I had was the pipe.
Yeah.
We didn't know where the
Yep.
discharge
So
was coming from.
we identified the pipe. It is a roof drain. So what we came up with was basically just cut off the drain from where it's currently exiting down the hill, and we'll direct it right into this plunge pool. So that'll reduce the future risk of any more scour coming out of that pipe.
Okay.
And we thought that was a pretty good solution.
All right. Now, there was some, and I can't tell here whether or not it's been changed, but
The drain
the drain was in the wrong place.
to
Is
The
it,
larger plan,
is it this one?
So maybe these drains here.
right.
So these
right.
drains, they connect to the city system. So they're going back.
This drain right here
Yeah.
is actually in a parking space. It looks like it's beyond the last parking space. I parked my car on top of it. So
Yeah.
I'm positive that it's in a parking space. Because I get out and I don't think I took a picture. Somebody may have taken a picture.
It's also in the middle of the slope, so it only gets the water that falls on it.
Yeah.
It's not against the curb, it's in the middle of the slope, off the curb. It's really catching nothing.
So I guess,
that's inaccurate.
so either way, these
See this?
drain back to the
Curve here.
city system.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
It
not,
actually came up like this.
They're going the other way?
kind of draw an imaginary line here.
Yep.
Water that's hitting the surface here is coming down into our system.
Right.
Any water hitting up here, whether it goes into that catch basin there or there, it's being directed through underground piping back to the city system in the street. So I guess I'm just not making the connection on the importance of that catch basin.
Well, number one, the plan is wrong because it is in a parking space.
Correct.
Okay.
And number two, it seems like, at least to my untutored eye, is that the water was shedding
This is.
this way. It missing that, but it was
right
going
off
this
that
way.
corner.
If it were to
Straight up.
catch it, that may
Oh,
drain
See
this
these
way,
parking spaces
Yeah.
there?
but the water is sheet
It's
flowing
right
this
there, the
way
parking space.
towards the,
This is.
the decrease in slope here. It seems to be going this way, because that's a downward slope there, going
Right.
down to this parking area.
Yeah.
That one's not
So A, I don't know what it's doing, and B,
So actually, everything that's.
if you tell me it's going in the other direction, that's great, but I don't know what it's
You'll
carrying,
miss that.
because the water from that
Perpendicular to the flow.
area is going down the
gonna
hill
hit here
towards the
and go
lower
up. Yeah.
parking lot
Yeah.
where you're repaving.
Yeah. So some of this water will come down this way. So whatever goes down there now is going to go down there after we add this curb, and we'll get directed to the plunge pool. And that's shown in our
By
stormwater
the
counts.
berm.
Right,
The curb.
Correct.
the curb.
Okay. What's the, can you tell us, and actually for the benefit of the public, what's the plunge pool do in terms of screening out any contaminants from the parking area? How does it work?
So basically, it'll take runoff from this entire area. It's about 6-inch minus stone. So water during the bigger storms, well, during any storm, is going to enter the plunge pool. And then instead of just ripping down that slope and causing erosion, it'll allow it to slowly dissipate out. You will get some collection of particulates in there, sediments. So it will need to be cleaned out over time, which we have in our operation and maintenance plan. And we also ran stormwater calculations on that, showing that water, after it's running into this plunge pool, the pre versus post is a de minimis change. It's less than 1/10 of a cubic foot per second. Which we usually,
Even with the 4 additional parking lots?
correct, yeah. So we usually look at increases on that scale as below the accuracy of the design software. So in a nutshell, that's how it works. So it'll just slowly dissipate the water rather than,
And what does it do, if anything, with respect to, I don't know what you use, salt, some kind of chloride to melt the snow? And where do you put the snow from the parking lot when you plow it?
I think currently some probably gets stored back here, but in the future, none will be allowed to be stored in this area because it has to be clear for the collection of water. So,
But does that mean it's going over the side? Because you're dumping it over the hill, you're dumping all that stuff. So that's, where is it? I'm sorry, could you introduce yourself?
Sharon Williams, manager at Winter Valley. The snow is along the left side as you drive into the parking lot. They put snow there.
Can you show us so that we can see what you're talking about? And you might need the microphone too. Matt, if you could give it to her for a moment. Thank you.
The snow is here. We don't put the snow here.
Okay.
The snow is here, or it's off, up in the back of the building, up in the back of the property, up by building 4,
Okay.
and some of it goes over to building 2.
Okay. Because you know where we would be concerned.
It
And
doesn't
that
go
would be at
here.
the top of the slope, right
Our
there.
dumpsters are here, and we keep our trucks here, so they don't keep snow there. That's cleared out.
Can I ask you a question? It was an extraordinarily dirty wetland, and my assumption is, and you can correct me, is that was occurring because of the placement of the dumpster.
That was my original thought. That was the reason for some of it. But we also found tires down there. People come along and throw their trash. I've seen it from across the street. They throw their leaves into the area as you pull into the property. And I think people just throw their trash. They found an extraordinary amount of trash down there.
These are your tenants.
No, not our tenants.
This is people pulling in and
People
dumping.
pull in and just dump. And our tenants, my tenants wouldn't throw 2 tires down there. They found tires, they found a lot of trash. Some of it was from the movement of the dumpsters, but when we finish
So what
this.
control will be exercised to make that different tomorrow from today?
Excuse me?
What controls will be put into place to make that different tomorrow from what it is today?
We're thinking about putting in an enclosure
Okay.
For the dumpster?
for the dumpsters, and so that the animals can't get at it. Some of the animals also go into the dumpsters. We have a lot of animals up there. So the animals will go in and throw it over, take a bag out and just rip it. And we'd like to put in an enclosure and possibly a camera. We'll see what that is, see if that makes
Can we
any
make
sense
those
for
orders?
us.
Yeah, I think so.
Weren't the dumpsters going to be relocated as part of
Yes,
this
the
proposed
dumpsters
plan?
will
So they're
be
not
put-
going to be on that high side?
They won't be here, they'll be, where am
They
I?
were up with this side of the
Where's the
plunge
building?
pool,
Oh, okay.
right
Yeah,
there.
so they're tucked in
And that
there.
worries me.
Okay.
They-
The dumpsters will go back, oh, and.
No, you're not
That-
gonna put
that's
them in the
where-
parking spaces.
No, they're not gonna go there. This is where they usually are, right in here.
Because when we went up, they were at the top of the hill.
Because this is all corroded, it's
Correct.
falling in. And one day, the trash truck came and it started to collapse. It started to sink into the ground. So we had to move them so they could get at them. So they are here, and they will go back over here where they have always been.
Okay. And with an enclosure? See, I don't know the building well enough, but is there an access there, on the lower side
Yes,
to the
there's the
building?
maintenance shop is down there.
So could you actually put an enclosure around the dumpster
We believe we could.
and
We'll
not?
have to look into that once we get,
All right, well,
everything
we'd
back
like
in
to
place.
condition as much as we could to protect the wetlands, because and you agree, it was pretty bad.
it was bad.
So we'd like to make that as part of the order, but we don't want to add something that you can't do, and it should be feasible.
We will look into it as soon as everything is back in place. We would like to do that. Would save us too from picking up trash.
All right, I'm just trying to figure out how we issue an
Man-hours.
order to include some kind of a condition, if we don't know what the condition is. I mean, I'd like to say something, we could make it broad enough that the dumpsters will be enclosed.
Right. That's simple, doesn't it? I don't think it has to be any more complicated than that, does it?
I don't think so. But we need to know essentially where they're going. So we'd say, and I'm asking you for the language, if we were to say that the dumpsters should be placed adjacent to the back of the building or adjacent to the building, because one of the concerns I have is that if they get too close to this plunge pool,
Right.
it's counterproductive.
Correct.
And I know there's a hill here, so, and I don't want to back it up so much that it's
No, we won't.
inhibiting your access. Is there space
I
in
believe
here?
there's enough space in here for the dumpsters.
So what would you call that? This is,
That's the shop.
so it would
It's
be
building
adjacent to the
one
shop?
Adjacent to the shop.
All right. Because I assume that, are the trucks coming in here or backing up to it?
They back up to it.
But if you put the dumpster there, that might inhibit that. I don't want to be impractical.
They used to be right here.
Side by side.
So, side by side. And they used to just back up. And I don't think it's going to interfere, do you? With,
I guess I just have to see how many and what size trucks they're bringing down in here. But if they were here before, there's no reason they wouldn't be able to go back here. And that's a good spot for them because it's far away from the slope and far away from the plunge pool. So,
So what do we call this? This is the north, this way, so this is the west side of the building, sort of?
yes, I believe it
No,
is.
So that's the western
Right,
side of
the
the
west
building.
side of building
How many
number one.
dumpsters are supposed to live in that space, or supposed to?
Two.
Two.
2, 6. What do you call
And they
them?
get exchanged, or did they just get emptied?
They get emptied.
They don't get exchanged, so they stay stationary.
Okay, so we can work on, we'll make it generic enough so that it gives you a little bit of flexibility in terms of planning.
Okay.
But we really would like to have those enclosed to prevent what happened before. All right?
Can you talk a little bit about the slope, about modifications to the slope, both for the plunge pool as well as for stabilizing the nose of the parking spaces along that side? Because we know that it's currently eroded, so you're going to be coming back in with something to stabilize it. Are you doing a retaining wall along that, or is the intent to come in and, oh, sorry. Is the intent to come in and regrade it? I mean, that's, well, how are you gonna stabilize the slope, both for the plunge pool and for the parking? My concern about the plunge pool is if you don't put something on the backside of it, it's basically just gonna be a flow through the gravel down the slope, where if you put something, if we pack the backside, then you actually are gonna get it to it's gonna flow into the ground rather than just become surface runoff
Yeah.
downhill.
So with the plunge pool, this will actually be excavated out almost 4 feet here.
Okay.
So you'll have kind of coming off the pavement, you'll come down 4 feet. So the back side of this is kind of like the berm that you're talking about.
What's the difference in grade there? Like
So
between the top of that berm and the bottom of the plunge pool?
4 feet.
On the berm on the backside is it's a 4-foot berm?
From this elevation here to
Yep.
the bottom is 4 feet.
Oh, okay.
And then keep going. Is it also 4 feet to the
To the parking lot?
parking lot?
So it'll be flush at the parking lot. So you'll come off flush, then come down to the bottom, and then come back up to basically to existing. We're not going to have a huge berm on the back.
You said it's flush. What is the drop from the flush to the bottom of the plunge, to the bottom of the excavation for the plunge pool?
The drop from here
Yep,
to here
yep.
is 4 feet.
And it's 4 feet on the other side as well.
Right.
So in order to get that to happen, there's a lot of buildup, because right now, that's a pretty good grade downhill towards the wetland. In order to get a 4-foot berm on the backside, you're packing that. You're either lowering the whole parking lot, or you're packing the backside of that plunge pool.
So this is meeting existing. So here it's flush. So you're not building a berm per se. You're more just removing this material to make a 4-foot deep hole.
Okay. if this is the slope, this is the parking lot up here.
Right.
This is the wetland down here, and it currently does something like that, so there's a little slope and it gets steeper down here. If you say you're 4 feet to the bottom here, and you're 4 feet up there, you just brought this up, I would say at least 2 feet on this side. So in order for this to be 4 feet deep from the edge from the edge near the berm near the wetland, the other side's gotta be down like 6 feet. It would have to
I
be
think
dead
the punch
level.
pool may be further back towards the parking lot than we.
Oh, is that
vision.
currently parking spaces? No, there was
Because
an
I
area
agree,
of
lawn.
lawn.
that's my impression. What you just described, that was my impression from being there. But what are the elevations here, and what's the elevation there?
So we have a top elevation of 97.25, and then we're coming down to 96. So you've got,
And that's what, 90?
That's a foot and a
you've
half.
got about a foot and a half, foot and a quarter,
Okay, so
foot
it's
and a half.
4.5 on one and a foot and a half on the other.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You still need to put some kind of a retaining, I know you're talking about packing the backside of it.
Well, I don't want to, my concern was that they were going to regrade the downhill side in order to give them enough of a berm height. And what he's saying now is that they're not doing that. They're actually excavating from what they have. They're not getting 4 feet on the downhill side. They're only getting a foot and a half or something less. And there's a 4-foot drop on the uphill side.
Is that enough?
It has to do with your calculations. I'm just worried about if the downhill side is too low, then the gravel just becomes a flow-through. It doesn't, there's no retention there, and then we're gonna continue to get washout because it'll be sheet flow out the back of that. It basically becomes riprap and less of a punch pool,
Right.
and that's what we don't want.
And so just these elevations, you're kind of seeing the top of this stone too. So you'll
Yep.
also get, those elevations basically represent this line.
Yep.
So you'll get some retention down within the stone. So if I were to show these elevations as the bottom of the stone, you'd see even more
Yeah.
volume.
So could you, if our concern is wash through, could you line the downhill side of the plunge pool with something to minimize flow through, forcing it into the ground? And have you done a perk test on the ground yet to know whether or not we're going to get any absorption?
We're not going to get much absorption. We've looked at the NRCS plans for the site,
Yep.
and they're showing a hydrologic soil type D.
Yep.
So there's going to be very
Nothing.
little absorption down there. It's more of just trying to slow that water as it's coming through.
Okay,
So it is a riprap,
so it is going to be riprap.
And it's stated as such on the plan.
as a riprap. Right, the plan also talks about a plunge pool.
plunge pool.
At least the plan talks, the narrative talks about a plunge pool.
Right, we're calling it a riprap plunge pool. Very descriptive.
Yes, kind of ambiguous.
Yeah.
So,
That's not going to do much for us in terms of runoff from the
Or washout.
parking area.
Right.
Or washout.
it'll slow it down, but it's going to spread it out, and we're still going to get washout downhill. So do you extend that further, do you extend the riprap further down the slope? In order to, or do you plant it? Do you plant the slope with something that's going to, is there another, understanding that we're not going to get a lot of absorption, most of it's going to be flow, can we plant the slope? What can you do? The concern is we want to minimize erosion of the slope. If it's just riprap and it stops, the downhill side of that's going to get eroded. Can we plant it with a grass, or is there another strategy for minimizing erosion downhill of the riprap?
So we looked at the velocities coming off there. I don't believe there'll be
There's not enough.
erosion coming out of there.
There's not enough flow.
Right.
Okay.
But there's no absorption either for the contaminants, because we started this discussion with, how are you going to pick up the contaminants and the petroleum products from the cars, washing into the wetlands. And I thought the absorption component was going to take care of that. Now it looks like a flow-through.
But maybe the better solution is not to do a riprap, but actually do something that will absorb and filter. Maybe the better.
No, I agree, but
Because
if the
you
soils
need to do
don't,
both.
but the soils aren't going to work.
Right, the soils, yeah, maybe you need to do both.
That's what I'm thinking, because you need to slow it down in order for it to get
Yeah,
to where it can absorb
right,
anything.
right.
So you've also got a foot-thick sand layer beneath that stone. So we're getting some absorption down through that. And remember, this area, we're looking about over 20 feet wide.
How much
About
volume?
10 feet deep.
How much volume are we talking about in a normal storm? I mean, what's a normal storm? But how much volume of water are we talking about?
That'll be directed into here.
And that
Draining quite a bit of surface area, right?
non-woven gesso. Yep. Oh, okay. That's just to maintain the isolation. Right, so.
Sure, sure.
Trying to understand this. How they really expect to do that? They do this one. They'd never do it. Yeah.
So. So I'm just trying to find the 2-year storm. So during a 2-year storm.
Yep.
To the plunge pool. So that's 2.5 inches of rain over 24 hours. You'd get about 8,500 cubic feet of water.
8,500 cubic feet.
Right.
That's not insignificant.
Well said.
But remember the size of the pool. It's, you got a pretty good footprint there.
But pretty good means how much is going to get retained?
Well, throughout the storm, all that water is gonna leave that pool.
Right. It's flow through.
Right. We're really just trying to slow down that water.
So there is
From
no,
today onwards.
there's no retention capacity.
No,
I mean,
right,
one of the
so
ways you slow it down is by holding it.
Right.
And so what's the holding capacity?
It's, I mean, you've got about 1.5 foot times the square of a footprint of 20 feet, maybe 200 cubic feet, 300 cubic feet.
Right, I'm just asking for ballpark, so it's 200 or 300 cubic feet.
And you
get
said 8,300?
8,500.
Right. And
It's moving through there pretty fast. We used to call that a waterfall.
So
I don't know how you're going to hold that slope.
we're looking more like, yeah, it's 400 cubic feet cumulative. So, but remember, that's over the course of 24 hours.
Sorry.
That's over the course of 24 hours. That's not a plug of all that water coming right through in one instant. So the idea is just if we can prevent the erosion that's going on today through this plunge pool, then we've achieved our goal. That's what we're going for. And that rate of runoff is, for all intents and purposes, unchanged.
Are you directing more water there now, than is there now? I mean, you're talking
Yes,
before about.
this
Parking
The
spaces.
600 square feet of pavement is going there that is not today.
So there's an additional 600 square feet.
Right.
Plus, you're redirecting a lot of water that went over the cliff previously by having the curbing in there.
Right. So everything that used to just rush down and find its own sort of gully
Going
is
that way.
going there.
Correct, as it should into the plunge pool.
Right.
Boy, and you don't have a plan for holding that slope. I mean, I understand the curbing aspect of it, but I'd like to see more information on what's on the downside, on the backside of the plunge pool as to how to hold that slope.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're holding the modifications to the slope at the edge of the parking? Because
So
it
we're
doesn't
gonna-
appear that there's, yeah.
We're going to do as little as possible. We're trying to do a full-depth reconstruction of the pavement, but in terms of, any sort of barriers back here beyond the curbing, we're going to try to do as little as possible. So we're hoping that full-depth buildup of the base layer and the pavement will be sufficient in those areas that are eroded. So granted, if there's a spot here and there where a gully's developed,
Right, you'll
we
build
may
it back
need,
in.
we may need to build that up a little bit in order to get that concrete, or the granite curbing in there.
So it's all
So-
granite curbing. Yep.
Right, so that'll be, you can set that in concrete.
Yep.
It's, in essence, it's a little mini retaining wall going along there, because you're setting it down 18 inches rather than just the 6 inches that you're seeing at the top. So we're hoping that's all we need to do, because obviously any further work down that slope is something we're trying to avoid.
Well, putting the curb in is going to help stop the erosion. The question is whether or not the weight of the cars is just going to push the whole thing through.
Right. Which, by fully reconstructing all this, we don't think that's going to happen. Basically, if it hasn't done that already in the pretty bad condition that it's in, doing it the right way, redoing it all, it shouldn't happen in the future.
So the edge of the parking, if I were to go out and look at it, the edge of the parking that is there now is going to be maintained. We're just going to get a granite curb along the face of it. We're not moving that line forward or backward.
Correct.
Okay.
You'll have the edge of the pavement.
Right.
Now you're going to get curves. You'll have 6 inches.
Right.
outside of it.
Outboard.
Right.
Yeah. And you're saying that goes down an additional 18, so we're looking at a 24-inch curb.
Total 18.
Total 18,
So
so it's 12
1
down.
foot below,
Okay.
6-inch reveal.
Okay.
All right. I don't get a warm and fuzzy feeling about this, but it sounds like an improvement, but I'm just looking for the best possible resolution, since you're doing it anyway. Is the
Right.
pool big enough? I mean, would it help slow down? I'm concerned with the backside and just deteriorating, going down into the wetlands. I'd like to see something that would give me confidence that this flow, which you're actually directing into this riprap area, is going to be pretty extensive. And because of that, I still think it's an improvement, but nevertheless, can you help us out by giving us more information on the backside? What can you put there that'll hold that slope? And it might be something as simple as a wetland mix of plants. I don't know.
So the whole thing will be lined with geotextile fabric.
The whole slope? Are you talking
Two
about
layers.
Just the plunge pool.
Just the plunge pool?
Plunge pool.
Right.
So that helps. That adds strength. We tried to keep it as small as possible because the bigger we make it, the further we're extending construction towards the
agree.
wetland.
Right.
So we're trying to maintain that balance of what's going to help, what's going to make it better without just building a huge detention pond over here for essentially existing pavement in a condition that's already there today.
Yeah, do you have a sense of what the slope should look like? I'm not talking
No,
about
I
the
don't.
detention area, but I'm talking about the backside of it as
I
you
don't
go
know.
down the hill.
I don't know. Can you tell me what the elevation is between the current bottom, the bottom of the plunge pool and the edge of the wetland? Is that like a 10-foot drop? Because it wasn't phenomenal, but it was steep.
Just from standing down there, it's at least 2 of me. We're talking
12 to 15.
maybe
kind of?
15 feet. So you're at 99 right here. The last grade I'm seeing here is 83.
Okay, so 60.
So you're maybe as much as 20 feet, but it's not 40 feet.
It's not full, right. What I was wondering was, if you were to go deep with the plunge pool, basically think of it as a dry well and less of a plunge pool, would that give the water more opportunity to get in and therefore not be an erosion issue, because now you're basically dropping it to the elevation of the wetland and letting it go horizontal Or is that,
Carve this out to the elevation of the wetland?
well, not to the elevation, but take that, if you take that, let's imagine that's a dry well and you take that down 15 feet. You said we're looking at 19 or 20 feet, right? So that's 5 feet above the wetland. You drop that straight down, fill it with gravel. You have some retention on that. Are we gonna get any flow through? And then and hopefully what we've done there is gotten rid of any surface water, because now it goes to the bottom of the pool and migrates horizontally. Would that do anything for us in terms of getting rid of the flow over the erosion?
It certainly would. It would give you, the more stone you add there, the more retention you're gonna get. It's just it would become a feasibility and a cost issue. I think digging out that hole, something that deep on the side of that slope.
It would just cave in.
Right. I just
Okay.
picture that being difficult.
Okay, I'm just looking for a way to get rid of the flow over the top. And
Can you split it, not going 15 feet, but instead of going 4 feet, can you go 8 feet? And I understand feasibility, but I just didn't know from an engineering perspective, that would obviously increase the holding capacity.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're going down 4 feet from the pavement, plus another 2 feet for your section. So we're 6 feet down as is. And honestly, we're not even, in our calculations, we were being conservative, and we're just showing this top elevation. So we're getting
Right.
all that storage in the stone in that whole sand layer beneath this.